Hello everyone, you're welcome back to my channel. This is a sequel to the video, My Best Friend and I Accidentally Married Mafia Brothers. 1 month to escape, but here is a recap of the first part. Natasha Chun, a struggling artist, and Zara Mitchell, a reformed con artist, take a girls' trip to Moscow to escape their dead-end lives. After a wild night of clubbing, they wake up married. Natasha to Alexei Volkov, the feared Bratva Pakhan, and Zara to his stone-cold enforcer, Dmitry Morozov. Before they can get annulments, assassins storm their hotel. The men reveal the truth. As Bratva wives, the women are now targets and must stay under protection for 1 month. Natasha and Zara agree to play along, planning to drain the men's accounts and disappear. But nothing is as it seems. Alexei married Natasha because she's identical to his childhood love who died in a trafficking ring. Dmitry has been hunting Zara for years. She conned his father in a scheme that led to his suicide. As the month progresses, layers of truth unravel. Natasha is Alexei's lost love, suffering from trauma-induced amnesia. Zara was forced into the con by her abusive ex, who turns out to be Alexei's uncle, the one orchestrating the assassination attempts. The drunk wedding wasn't random. Alexei's subconscious recognized Natasha, and Dmitry saw a chance to protect Zara from her past. The stakes skyrocketed when both women discover they're pregnant. The story will continue using Natasha's point of view.
The studio smelled of drying oil and old winter memories. I had been painting for a week in a fever state, my delicate hands stained with charcoal and indigo. I wasn't just creating art anymore. I was excavating a burial site. I stared at the canvas, a pair of children's hands reaching through falling snow, and felt the phantom cold in my marrow. My hazel eyes were sunken with exhaustion, my mind a kaleidoscope of half-formed faces and the echo of a name I couldn't quite claim. Alexei appeared in the doorway, his imposing frame casting a shadow that felt like a protective shroud. His ice-blue eyes, usually so guarded, were filled with a raw, quiet concern. He didn't look at the mess of the room. He looked only at me. "There is somewhere I need to go today, Natasha," he said, his voice unusually gentle. "It is an anniversary. I would like you to be there with me." I didn't ask where. I just nodded. I dressed in a flowing gown of deep midnight blue, my chestnut waves braided back to reveal the porcelain paleness of my neck. Alexei wore a perfectly tailored black suit, looking every inch the powerful Pakhan, yet as he helped me into the car, his broad shoulders were taut with a tension I'd never seen. "Are you okay?" I whispered, touching his hand. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed on the passing Moscow streets. Today is difficult. Every year. We arrived at a somber, beautiful site on the outskirts of the city. It was a memorial of glass and light, dedicated to the victims of trafficking. Names were etched into stone walls that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. To my shock, as we walked, people approached Alexei not with fear, but with a reverence that bordered on the sacred. "He saved my daughter," a woman whispered. "He gave us hope," a man said, clutching Alexei's hand. I saw him then not as a monster, but as a savior who used his darkness to fund the light. Alexei led me away from the crowd to a private section of the wall. He stopped before a black and white photograph of a small boy, perhaps 9 years old, with serious eyes and a bandaged chest. The caption read, "Alexei Volkov, age 9. Sustained serious injuries protecting captive children. Youngest recipient of the Medal of Courage." My breath hitched. "Alyosha," I breathed, the name finally fitting the face. But then my eyes drifted to the photo beside it. It was a memorial enlargement of a 7-year-old girl with chestnut braids and hazel eyes. She was holding a drawing of 2 stick figures holding hands. The caption read, "Anastasia Petrova. Missing. Presumed dead." The world tilted. The glass wall became a mirror. The memory flood didn't come in waves. It came as a tsunami. I saw a young Alyosha teaching me to draw, his small hand guiding my lines. "Make them soft, Tasha." I saw us in a winter courtyard, my laughter echoing as he built me a snowman. Then, the darkness. The men in black. Alyosha's small body, throwing itself against giants to keep them from taking me. "Tasha, I'll find you." His blood on the snow was the last thing I saw before the captivity began. Years of being told he was dead, that I had killed him by being weak. My legs gave out. I would have hit the stone if Alexei's imposing arms hadn't caught me. I looked up at him through a blur of tears, seeing the boy and the man simultaneously. Alyosha. My voice broke, a jagged sob escaping my throat. You didn't die. They told me you died. He collapsed with me, his forehead resting against mine as he finally let the walls crumble. He was sobbing, his broad frame shaking against my delicate one. Tasha. My Tasha. You remember. We sat on a bench overlooking the names of the lost, and he told me everything. He had been searching for 15 years. Every girl he saved, every ring he dismantled, was a prayer that the next one would be me. When I saw you in that club, he whispered, his ice blue eyes wet and burning, I thought my obsession had finally broken my mind. I married you because I couldn't let you disappear again. Even if you hated me, I needed you where I could protect you. They told me I was alone. I cried, tracing the scars on his face that I now knew he earned for me. I buried Anastasia because I couldn't live with her guilt. You were never a ghost to me, he said, his voice certain. You were the only thing that ever made me feel alive. He kissed me then, not as a stranger, but as a soulmate found after a lifetime in the desert. Against the memorial wall, among the names of those who didn't make it, we reclaimed what was ours. In that spiritual reunion, I felt the truth in my blood. I'm pregnant, Alyosha. I whispered against his neck as the sun began to set. With our daughter. He froze, then dropped to his knees, kissing my stomach through the silk of my dress. A girl? I'll protect her. Both of you. Forever. No, I said, pulling him up. This time, we protect each other. While my past was being resurrected, Zara was fighting to believe in her future. She was pacing Dmitri's industrial loft, her athletic frame tense in black workout clothes. She had known for a week, and the secret was eating her alive. When Dmitri entered, his lean frame radiating a weary confidence, he found her on the bathroom floor, the pregnancy test visible on the counter. Zara, his green eyes went wide. I'm pregnant, she snapped, her defensive walls rising. I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve this. Victor trained me to be a weapon, not a mother. I'm terrified, Dmitri. Dmitri didn't recoil. He didn't speak of his father or the debt. He dropped to his knees, his ringed hands gently touching her still flat stomach. Our baby, he whispered. He looked up, his green eyes blazing with a fierce, new light. Marry me again, Zara. We're already married, she stammered, her steel-gray eyes disbelieving. No. That was chance. I want to marry you sober. I want to choose you, he said, standing and taking her face in his hands. You survived, Victor. You survived my hatred. Will you survive me loving you for the rest of our lives? Zara's sharp features softened, her dark lips finally curling into a genuine smile. Yes, she breathed. I choose you. Every day. That evening, we connected via a video call. Two couples forged in fire. I remember everything, I told Zara, my face glowing despite the tears. I'm Anastasia. Holy shit, Zara laughed, her eyes wide. And I'm going to be a mother. Dmitri proposed. I'm pregnant too. I squealed, a joyful sound that felt like a victory over every dark year we'd endured. Our babies would grow up together. They would never know the cold of an orphanage or the shadow of a Khan. But as we laughed, miles away in a darkened room, Viktor Volkov watched our joy through a hidden lens. He pressed a phone to his ear, his face a mask of predatory calculation. They're bonded now, Viktor told Irina Sokolov. The pregnancies make them vulnerable. They've become a real family. A cold, hollow smile touched his lips. Time to eliminate the wives. Alexei and Dmitri will destroy themselves trying to save what I'm about to take. The midpoint had shifted. We were no longer victims or accidental brides. We were a family. And in the world of the Bratva, that was the most dangerous thing you could be. The clinical white of the private Bratva clinic didn't feel cold today. It felt like a canvas waiting for its first stroke of color. I sat on the edge of the examination table in a soft lavender maternity dress, my chestnut waves loose and my delicate features glowing with a serenity I hadn't known in years. Beside me, Zara was a vision of sharp, proud strength in a sleek black maternity outfit, her jet black hair pulled into a low ponytail. We had requested to do this together, one final best friend moment, before the reality of motherhood truly set in. The hum of the ultrasound machine filled the room as the doctor moved the transducer over my stomach. A tiny, rhythmic pulse appeared on the screen, a heartbeat so strong it made my own stutter. "Definitely a girl," the doctor noted. "I can tell already." My hazel eyes filled with tears, and I squeezed Zara's hand until my knuckles went white. "Alexandra," I whispered. "We'll name her Alexandra. Sasha." Moments later, Zara's monitor flickered to life with an equally robust heartbeat. The doctor tilted the screen. "Too early to be certain, but the positioning suggests a boy." Zara's steel-gray stare softened, her sharp features melting into a rare, breathtaking vulnerability. "Dimitri Jr.," she murmured. "Dima." We walked out of that clinic holding hands, a silent pact formed in the hallway. Our children would never know the loneliness we had. They would have each other, just like us. When we announced the news to Grandmother Volkov in the formal parlor, the matriarch didn't even wait for us to speak. She saw the radiance in my face and the softness in Zara's and began to cry. "Babies," she sobbed, embracing us both. "My fierce girls bringing life to a family of death." She looked at Alexei, whose 6 feet 2 inches imposing frame was actually vibrating with a smile, and then at Dimitri, whose lean build finally looked relaxed. "1 month from now," she declared, "we will have a vow renewal. All the families will see the Volkovs celebrate life." The weeks that followed were a montage of domestic bliss. I spent hours in the adjoining nurseries, painting a fairy tale forest directly onto the walls with soft pastels. Alexei was always there, his broad shoulders looking comically large on a stepladder as he helped me paint the high sections. "Higher, Alyosha," I direct, and the Pakhan would grumble even as his ice-blue eyes warmed with love. Meanwhile, Zara and Dimitri provided the comedy, struggling to assemble Swedish cribs. "I kill people for a living. Why is this harder?" Dimitri groaned as a wood panel collapsed for the 3rd time. Zara just laughed, her dark matte lips genuine as she leaned against him. But our happiness wasn't just inward. We found purpose. I opened Anastasia's Haven, an art therapy center for trafficking survivors. Standing before my major painting of 2 children walking from a dark forest into a meadow, I told the elite of Moscow the truth. I am Anastasia Petrova. I was trafficked at 7. Art saved me, and now it will save others. Alexei stood at my side, his hand protectively on my belly, his empire's wealth now flowing into healing instead of harm. Zara launched Mitchell and Morozov Security, teaching abuse survivors to fight back. Watching her deliver a demonstration in modified tactical gear, her steel-gray stare fierce, I knew she had finally stopped running. The evening of our official family announcement dinner arrived in a flurry of champagne silk and champagne toasts. Zara and I got ready together, touching our bellies and marveling at how we had escaped the nightmare. "We made it, Nat," she whispered. "Our kids will have everything." We descended the stairs together to a dining room filled with the Bratva hierarchy. Alexei and Dimitri met us at the base of the steps, their eyes reflecting only us. The atmosphere was festive, the joy in the compound palpable, until the doorbell rang. The butler entered, his face ashen. "Sir, Viktor Volkov and FBI agent Morrison are here." The room went arctic. Viktor walked in with a predatory, charismatic smile, Agent Morrison trailing behind him. Viktor's eyes scanned the room, landing with sickening intent on our pregnant forms. "Nephew." "Dimitri," he purred, his gaze lingering on my stomach. "And the blushing brides. Looking fertile." Alexei stood, his broad shoulders shielding me as his ice-blue eyes turned deadly. Dimitri stepped in front of Zara, his lean frame coiled like a spring. "I came to collect what's mine, nephew," Victor smiled, his predatory gaze fixed on us like property. The screen faded to black on that smile, the warmth of the evening snuffed out in an instant. The champagne in my glass suddenly looked like stagnant water. The festive hum of the dining room died a slow, agonizing death as Viktor Volkov strolled into the room, FBI agent Morrison and a dozen armed men trailing him like shadows of a coming eclipse. My heart, which had been light with the news of my daughter, now hammered against my ribs with a frantic, sickening rhythm. Victor didn't look like a man crashing a party. He looked like a landlord coming to collect a debt on a property he'd already decided to burn. He walked to the head of the long mahogany table, pulling out the chair with a slow, agonizing screech. "You all look so confused," Victor mused, his voice smooth and oily. He began to circle the table, a predator tracing the perimeter of a cage. This family, this empire, it was supposed to be mine. But my older brother, Alexei's father, he got everything just because he happened to be born first. So unfair, don't you think? He stopped directly behind my chair. I flinched as his hand, cold and heavy, came down on my shoulder. Alexei half rose from his seat, his ice-blue eyes turning into chips of frozen fire. "Sit, nephew," Victor warned, his gaze flicking to the FBI agents. "Or Morrison's men turn this celebratory dinner into a wake." He leaned down, his breath ghosting over my ear. "You don't remember me, do you, Anastasia?" My breath hitched. My delicate features went ashen as the name, my real name, sounded like a curse in his mouth. "I was the one who arranged your transportation from the orphanage," he whispered. "I paid good money to have you, and the others taken."
"Why?"
"To break little Alyosha's spirit. Watching that 9-year-old boy try to be a hero? Priceless. I made sure you were told he died, so you'd rot with the guilt." Alexei let out a guttural roar, lunging across the table. 2 agents tackled his imposing frame, slamming him against the hardwood. Dmitri grabbed his brother's arm, his green eyes wide with a desperate warning. "Not now, Alexei. Not with guns on the women." Victor just laughed, moving on to Zara. He pulled a stack of photos from his pocket, tossing them onto the table. They were images of a younger Zara, bruised, terrified, standing next to a younger Victor. "And my little weapon," Victor purred. "Zara was mine for 2 years. Such an obedient girl when properly motivated. Dimitri's father was getting too powerful, so I used my pet con artist to destroy him. When he couldn't live with the shame, he did my work for me." Dimitri's voice broke, a jagged sound of pure agony. "You forced her. She was a victim." "Victim. Weapon. What's the difference?" Victor shrugged. He turned to the room at large, his eyes gleaming with malice. "The weddings? You think they were accidents? Irina works for me. She spiked your drinks with memory suppressants and suggestion drugs. We wanted you bound to these men legally. Make it hurt more when I tear you apart. The assassins? All mine. I needed you scared. Men make mistakes when they have something to lose. And now." He looked at our pregnant bellies. "You have everything to lose." Irina entered then, her cold, beautiful face twisted into a smirk. "You broke our engagement for a ghost, Alexei," she said, gesturing dismissively at me. "Victor promised me, when she's gone, you'll be mine again." "I'd rather die," Alexei spat. "That can be arranged," she countered. Morrison stepped forward, the metallic click of handcuffs echoing in the silence. "Zara Mitchell, you're under arrest. Outstanding warrants for fraud and conspiracy." Dmitri lunged forward, his lean frame a blur of motion. "You can't take her. She's pregnant. FBI jurisdiction, kid." Morrison smirked. "And Victor pays much better than Uncle Sam." Zara stood, her sharp features miraculously calm. She locked eyes with Dmitri, her steel-gray stare steady. "It's okay, Dmitri. Protect our son. I'll be fine. I always am." As they dragged her away, Dimitri's scream of her name echoed through the compound, a sound of total, unraveling loss. Victor turned his attention back to me. I backed away, my slim hands clutching my belly protectively. "You should have stayed lost, little Anastasia," he said, reaching for my stomach. That child is Volkov blood. She belongs to the family. To me. Don't touch my daughter. I screamed, slapping his hand away. The act triggered it, the flood. The trauma of the orphanage, the men in black, the years of captivity came rushing back in a tidal wave. My body began to shake violently. I couldn't draw air. The world tilted as I collapsed to the floor, my hazel eyes going vacant as I dissociated into the dark. Make your choice, nephew, Victor challenged Alexei. Morrison's van is leaving with your brother's wife, and your pretty Tasha is having a medical emergency. You can't save both.
So choose. Now.
Through the roar of my panic, I heard him. I forced my lips to move. Save, Vera, I gasped. I'll be fine. I'm fiercer than you remember? Alexei's eyes filled with tears, a sight that broke what was left of my heart. He looked at me, then at the door where Zara was disappearing. He made the impossible choice. He left his best guards with me and ran with Dmitri to chase the van. But as soon as the door slammed, the loyal guards turned. They were Victor's plants. A firefight erupted in the dining room. Amidst the chaos, my survival instincts, Anastasia's instincts, snapped into place. I grabbed a dropped pistol, my artist's hand steady despite the terror. I fired, taking down 2 men who tried to reach grandmother Volkov. But I was one woman against an army. Victor appeared behind me with a chloroform cloth. You always were a fighter, he hissed. I struggled, my slim figure thrashing against his bulk, but the fumes took hold. My last sight was his predatory smile before the world went black. Miles away, the FBI van stopped in a desolate warehouse district. Irina stepped in, holding a gun. Victor said I could have some fun, she whispered to Zara. At the same time, Alexei's phone rang. It was grandmother. They took her. Victor took Tasha. Alexei punched the dashboard of the SUV, denting the steel. He was a man possessed, his ice blue eyes going dead. Where is she? Dmitri was frantic, but his eyes were on his phone. Zara's posting to her social media, it's code. Our old breadcrumbs. She's at Section 7, but she tagged it wrong. It's a warning. It's a trap. Alexei tapped into the city's surveillance. Natasha is at Section 9. They've split them up. We have to separate. It was the most dangerous move they could make. No backup. No margin for error. The brothers faced each other in the Moscow night, their foreheads touching for one brief, final second. It's been an honor, brother, Alexei whispered. The honor was mine, Pak Han, Dmitri replied. They split. Alexei headed for Section 9, his imposing frame draped in tactical gear, his mind a singular focus. I won't fail her twice. Dmitri breached the perimeter of Section 7, his green eyes lethal as he whispered a promise to the woman who had become his entire world. The scene ended with a 4-way split screen. Natasha, tied to a chair in a dark warehouse. Zara, cuffed to a radiator, working a hidden bobby pin into the lock, and the 2 Volkov brothers, entering their respective battlefields. Victor sat in a control room, watching the monitors, his smile wide and terrible. Now, he whispered, we finish this. The warehouse smelled of rusted iron and stagnant river water, a cold, industrial tomb designed to swallow secrets. I was tied to a wooden chair in the center of the vast, empty space, a single overhead spotlight pinning my delicate figure to the concrete floor. My champagne silk dress was a ruin of mud and torn lace, and my chestnut waves were matted with a cold sweat that made my skin crawl. Bruises were already blooming like dark flowers on my face, but as I looked into the shadows, my hazel eyes didn't flicker with the fear of the victim I had been. Anastasia was clawing her way to the surface. Victor circled me, his footsteps echoing like a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. He didn't hit me yet. He preferred the insidious edge of psychological torture. One night, he mused, his voice a smooth, oily caress. That's all it took to break a 7-year-old girl. You went from a laughing child to a terrified ghost in hours. And now, little Alyosha is coming to play the hero again.
So brave.
So stupid. He leaned in, his predatory breath hot against my ear. I'll kill him in front of you. You'll watch his ice blue eyes go empty, just like I made you believe they did 15 years ago. Then I'll take your daughter. No art, Natasha. No softness. I'll raise her to be pure Volkov. I won't betray him, I whispered, my voice a thread of steel. Not again. Victor chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. Again? You were a child. But guilt is a masterpiece, isn't it? I gave you 15 years of pain, and tonight, I'll give you the finale. He backhanded me, a sharp, stinging strike that sent my head snapping back. He didn't touch my belly. He wanted the prize inside alive. He pulled my hair, forcing me to look at him. You always were tougher than you looked. That's why I chose you. Most children broke. You kept fighting. It made you valuable. As he spoke, I didn't listen to his poison. I went inward.
Count breaths. 4 in.
Hold. 4 out. I visualized the colors of the nursery I'd painted: lavender, mint green, pale gold. I remembered Alexei's voice. You're fiercer than I remembered. Using the precision of an artist, my delicate hands worked the ropes. I had escaped once at 14. I would escape now. One wrist came free, then the other, but I kept my hands behind my back, coiled like a spring. In a suburban basement miles away, Zara was facing her own darkness. Cuffed to a radiator, her athletic build was constrained, but her con artist's mind was moving at 1,000 miles an hour. Upstairs, she could hear Morrison and Irina arguing, their voices rising in a fever of greed and jealousy. Victor said, "Wait." Morrison shouted, "I want her dead now." Irina shrieked, "She's carrying his bastard. He should have been mine." Zara called out, her voice dripping with sweet, tactical honey. "You two make a cute couple. How long have you been sleeping together?" The silence that followed was heavy. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Zara watched them with a steel-gray stare, planting seeds of distrust. I just assumed. Victor usually pairs people like that to make them disposable. You really think he's going to pay you both? He told Morrison you were a distraction, Irina. And Morrison? Victor told me you were just a loose end he'd clip once the brothers are dead. She watched them glance at each other, the poison of paranoia taking root. As they devolved into a shouting match of accusations, Zara used a bobby pin from her jet black hair. The cuffs clicked open silently. She stayed still, her sharp features focused. For my son. For Dmitri. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the weapon. The Moscow night was a blur of speed and desperation. Alexei gripped the steering wheel of his SUV, his knuckles white, his scarred face a mask of grim determination. "Hold on, Tasha," he whispered to the empty car. "I failed you once. Never again." He checked the heat signatures on the warehouse schematics. 2 bodies. One tied, one pacing. Arrogant bastard. Dmitri was breaching the safe-house perimeter, his green eyes devoid of their usual mischief. Non-lethal on the feds, he ordered his team. But Irina? Kill on sight. Get Zara out. He saw her breadcrumbs on the social media feed, coded messages only he could decipher.
She's ready.
She's fighting. The brothers shared one last encrypted call. You close? Alexei asked. 5 minutes, Dmitri replied. What if we can't save them both? We will, Alexei said, his ice blue eyes turning to stone. Brothers? Always. Back in the warehouse, Victor grew bored with words. He pulled a knife, the blade glinting under the spotlight. I'll make sure there's nothing left to save, he hissed, moving toward my pregnant belly. Your baby first. Then you. I didn't wait. I ripped my hands free and kicked his knee with a strength born of pure survival. He stumbled, and I broke the chair against the wall, grabbing a jagged wooden leg. I stood, my delicate figure trembling but fierce. I'm Anastasia Petrova. I spat, hazel eyes burning. And you don't owe me any more. He lunged, grabbing my hair, and I screamed as we fought, an artist wielding wood like a staff against a monster with a blade. In the safe house, Zara launched herself at Morrison, her athletic curves slamming him into the concrete. Irina joined the fray, pulling Zara's hair, and the three of them spiraled into a brutal, personal collision. "He never wanted you," Zara hissed at Irina. But Morrison recovered, aiming his gun at Zara's chest. "Enough." Zara froze, hands raised, waiting for the one opening she needed. Suddenly, the world exploded. In the warehouse, the door was kicked off its hinges. Alexei's imposing frame was silhouetted against the night, a roar of pure, primal fury tearing from his throat. "Get away from her." At the safe house, the windows shattered as Dimitri's team breached. Dimitri's green eyes locked onto Zara, seeing the guns pointed at her. Zara, down. Image, a four-way split screen. Top left, Alexei lunging toward Victor. Top right, Dimitri diving toward Zara. Bottom left, Natasha wielding a chair leg, fierce and bloody. Bottom right, Zara on the floor, diving for cover. "Alyosha," I thought as the first bullet echoed. "I'm not the girl who needs saving. But I'm glad you're here." The screen cut to black as the reckoning began. The warehouse door didn't just open, it disintegrated. Alexei's 6 feet 2 inches imposing frame crashed through the industrial darkness like a force of nature, his ice-blue eyes instantly locking onto the nightmare in the center of the room. Victor was lunging, knife raised, toward my pregnant belly. My champagne silk dress was a rag of mud and crimson, my chestnut waves wild and matted with sweat, but as I raised the jagged wooden leg of the chair I'd smashed, the hazel eyes that met Victor's weren't those of a victim. Anastasia was fully, lethally awake. Finally, Victor snarled, turning his predatory smile toward the doorway. "The great Alexei Volkov. Right on time, nephew. But this time, you're too late." Victor lunged. He wasn't going for Alexei, he was going for me, for the life inside me. Alexei fired, the bullet catching Victor's shoulder, but the monster's momentum carried him forward. "Tasha." Alexei's roar shook the rafters. I didn't wait to be saved. As Victor reached me, I swung the heavy wooden leg with every ounce of maternal fury in my marrow. It connected with his wrist with a sickening crack. The knife skittered across the concrete. "You don't get to take anything else from me," I screamed, kicking his injured shoulder. He roared, backhanding me with a force that sent me flying against the cold brick wall. Alexei caught me before I hit the floor, his broad shoulders shielding my slim, delicate frame. His ice-blue eyes scanned me with a terror I had never seen. "Tasha, baby, are you?" "I'm fine," I gasped, my hazel eyes blazing as I pointed at the man struggling to stand. "He's not." Alexei set me gently behind him, his imposing frame a wall of obsidian between me and my past. Victor laughed, coughing blood. "Still playing protector. She'll die because of you, just like before." "You're wrong." Alexei's voice was colder than a Siberian winter. "I'm not a 9-year-old boy anymore. And she's not a 7-year-old victim. We survived you. But you're still the same pathetic man who destroys children to feel powerful." "I built an empire," Victor shrieked, pulling a hidden gun from his ankle holster. "I made you what you are." He aimed the weapon directly at my heart. "Then watch her die." Time slowed into a cinematic blur of shadow and light. I saw his finger tighten on the trigger. I didn't think, I acted. I lunged in front of Alexei's imposing frame. "Not again. I won't lose you again." The gunshot echoed like a thunderclap. A sharp, searing heat blossomed in my shoulder, the same side where Alexei carried his scar from the night we were children. I felt the champagne silk go wet with crimson as I collapsed into his arms. Alexei's eyes went absolutely arctic. The Pac-Han was gone. Only the man who loved me remained, and his fury was a holy thing. He let out a roar of an "oh" that sounded like the earth rending. He descended on Victor with a brutal, lethal precision born of 15 years of repressed rage. It wasn't a fight. It was a reckoning. Blow by blow, he dismantled the man who had stolen our lives, breaking bone, drawing blood, until Victor lay defeated on the concrete, snow falling through the broken skylight onto his dying form. Don't become him, Alyosha, I whispered, clutching my bleeding shoulder. Choose differently. Alexei looked at me, then back at the monster. He lowered his gun. You'll stand trial, he spat. All the families you destroyed will see you broken. Death is too good for you. He turned away, but Victor, in a final act of cowardice, lunged with a hidden boot knife. Alexei spun and fired on instinct, one shot, center mass. Victor slumped, dead before he hit the ground. Alexei dropped the gun and ran to me, his hands trembling as he cradled my head. Stay with me, Tasha. I found you. I can't lose you. The baby. I choked out, my porcelain skin turning translucent. Our daughter. Alexei's large, scarred hand pressed against my stomach. His ice-blue eyes flooded with tears as he felt a sharp, defiant kick. She's moving. She's strong, Tasha. Just like you. We're even now, I whispered, touching his face with a blood-stained hand. You saved me then. I saved you today. Partnership, Alyosha. Across the city, the safe house battle was a parallel storm of chaos. Dimitri's tactical team breached the windows in a haze of flashbangs. Zara, down. Dimitri roared. Zara didn't hesitate. She dropped to the floor, her jet-black hair spreading like ink as she rolled for cover, protecting her belly. While Dimitri engaged the FBI agents, taking them down with non-lethal efficiency, Irina lunged for Zara. You ruined everything, Irina shrieked, aiming her gun point-blank at Zara's stomach. Dimitri launched himself across the room, desperate, but he was too far. Irina pulled the trigger.
Click.
Nothing happened. Zara's sharp features twisted into a cold, triumphant smile. She held up the ammunition magazine she'd pickpocket from Irina during their basement struggle. Victor taught me. Always control the weapons, she spat. With a brutal, efficient takedown, Zara disarmed the woman and knocked her unconscious with a single, practiced punch. Dimitri reached her, his rings cool against her olive skin as he pulled her into a fierce embrace. I didn't need saving, Zara whispered into his neck. I know, Dimitri breathed, his crooked smile returning through his terror. That's what partners do. Hours later, the sterile silence of the hospital waiting room was suffocating. Alexei sat with his head in his hands, his formal suit stained with my blood. Dimitri and Zara, bruised and tactical, sat beside him. When the doctor finally emerged, his scrubs bloodied, Alexei stood with a staggering desperation. The surgery was successful, the doctor said. The bullet is out. And your daughter is fine. Maternal instinct saved her. She didn't take any impact. Alexei collapsed back into the chair, the imposing Pac-Han finally breaking as he wept into his hands. When he finally entered my room, the machines were beeping a steady, peaceful rhythm. I looked up, my arm in a sling, but my hazel eyes warm. He came to my bedside, his large hand joining mine on my belly as our daughter kicked against his palm. She's a Volkov, I whispered. She's a fighter. She's a Petrova, Alexei corrected, kissing my forehead. She's a survivor. Zara and Dimitri entered softly, the four of us reunited in the quiet of the recovery room. Zara took my hand, her steel-gray eyes red from crying.
We did it, Nat.
We're out. We're a family, I said, looking at the two men who had become our anchors and the best friend who was my soul. Outside, the Moscow snow continued to fall, but for the first time in 15 years, the cold couldn't reach us. We had survived the dark, and together, we were the light. 3 months had passed since the snows of Moscow were stained with the blood of our past, and today, the city felt new. The grand opening of Anastasia's Haven was more than a gallery launch. It was a resurrection. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the modern glass and warm brick space with light, illuminating the works of survivors who had turned their agonies into installations of hope. I stood at the center of the room, 7 months pregnant and glowing in an emerald green maternity gown. My chestnut waves were swept into a soft updo, and though the scar on my shoulder was visible above the neckline, I no longer felt the need to hide it. It was a map of where I'd been, not a definition of who I was. Alexei was a constant presence at my side, his 6 feet 2 inches imposing frame clad in a tailored charcoal suit. His ice blue eyes, once so cold they could freeze a heart, were now softened by a tenderness that made him unrecognizable to the elite society members whispering around us. His hand rested protectively on my lower back, his other palm occasionally drifting to my belly to feel our daughter move. "You need water, Tasha? Are you tired?" he whispered for the 10th time. I laughed softly, leaning into him. "Alyosha, I'm giving a speech, not climbing Everest." When it was time, we walked to the centerpiece of the gallery, a massive canvas covered in silk. I pulled the cloth to reveal Alyosha and Tasha, finding home. It depicted 2 children, a 9-year-old boy with serious eyes and a 7-year-old girl with chestnut braids, walking hand in hand from a dark orphanage into a shimmering Moscow skyline. In the shadows behind them, our adult selves watched over them with compassion. A hush fell over the crowd, followed by a wave of applause that felt like a healing balm. Standing at the podium, my voice was steady. "My name is Anastasia Petrovna Volkov," I told them. "I spent 15 years trying to bury that girl. But I learned that survival isn't just living, it's choosing to heal. This center is for every child told they are broken. We are more than what happened to us. We are what we choose to become." The standing ovation was a roar of affirmation, but the most important reaction was the wetness in Alexei's eyes. Across the city, Zara was launching her own revolution at Mitchell and Morozov Security Solutions. In a professional industrial space, she led a self-defense demonstration for abuse survivors. She was 7 months pregnant as well, her athletic build striking in custom-designed maternity tactical gear. Her jet-black hair was pulled into a fierce ponytail, her steel-gray stare commanding the room. "Your past doesn't define your future," she told the group, her movements precise as she demonstrated an escape from a wrist lock. "I was a victim once. Then I was a weapon for a monster. Now I choose the target I protect." Dmitri watched from the observation room, his green eyes shimmering with pride as he leaned against the glass. When Zara overextended herself for a high kick, his voice crackled over the intercom. "Wife, you're supposed to be resting." Zara looked up, her dark lips curving into a playful smirk. "I rested yesterday, Dmitri. Stop worrying." She blew him a kiss through the glass, a con artist who had finally found something real to hold on to. That evening, the compound was no longer a fortress. It was a home. We gathered for family dinner, just the 4 of us and Grandmother Volkov. We discussed nursery colors and the double wedding ceremony planned for next month. "Worst night, best decision," Zara joked, toasting to the night we woke up married in Moscow. A month later, under a gentle winter snowfall, we stood in the gardens for our re-wedding. I wore white silk that celebrated my prominent belly. Zara wore sleek, defiant black. We exchanged vows that weren't fueled by drugs or desperation, but by the deliberate choice to stay. "I found you twice in this lifetime," Alexei told me, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll spend forever being worthy of the woman you became." The epilogue of our lives unfolded in a montage of light. 6 months later, the nursery was filled with the cries of 2 healthy babies, Alexandra Sasha Volkov, with her father's ice-blue eyes, and Dmitri Dima Jr., with his mother's sharp, fierce features. 2 years after that, I watched from the pergola as Sasha painted on a low canvas while Dima stood guard with a toy gun, his green eyes scanning the garden for imaginary threats. They were best friends, a mirror of the women who raised them. We were no longer running. We were no longer ghosts. They say you can't outrun your past, but maybe you don't have to. Maybe you just need someone to walk with you through it. We went to Moscow to escape our lives. Instead, we found our home. The end.